Well, I am so glad you are here. So, business planning workshop. Master the art of reverse engineering your goals, creating a rock solid, success driven business plan. So, a little bit about me. I am a wife and a mother of four. Some of you guys know this. I've got twins. I grew up in Northern California. I went to college on a soccer scholarship. I taught elementary school for 15 years. Yes, 15 years. And when my husband and I bought our first home a little over 17 years ago, I literally looked at my husband. I was like, Eric, I need to figure out a way to like do real estate at some capacity in my life. I love the whole process. And so shortly after we bought our first home, I ended up getting my real estate license, but literally had no idea what to do. And I was kind of at this crossroads where I'm like, okay, I'm still teaching elementary school, but I have no idea how to start a real estate business. I didn't have like a mentor or a coach or anything. And it took several years to get to that point where I, was able to comfortably do transactions and all of that. And by the time I got comfortable doing transactions, COVID hit and we decided we were going to move our family from California to Utah. We had bought an investment property here in Utah and we ended up we moved, and I found myself in a new state, in a new area, in a new location. And I looked at my husband and I'm like, okay, so should I teach? Should I, build up a real estate business here, but I don't know anybody? Like, this is going to be really tricky. And I honestly, I don't know what we should do. And so he's like, well, whatever you do not teach and do real estate at the same time. Like, it's just, for me, it was great at the end. But like, as I was leaving California, I was teaching third grade and I had 3 homes under contract as we were leaving, and juggling the 4 kids and homeschooling. So it was a little crazy. And so Eric's like, whatever you do, pick one thing and then we're good. So I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to just try real estate and building a business. I don't need to build it in a year or even 2 years. Like, I'll just start slow. That was like my mentality. So starting slow, I don't know. So at least for me, I was like, you know what? I'm not going to put pressure on myself to try to build this huge business. It's going to be kind of just like a little side hustle. But as I went through I don't know, the college soccer player in me, the competitive nature just inside myself, I was like, okay, well, this happened. So then let me try this, and then let me try this. And it just kind of kept going. So tell me if this sounds familiar. And I'm telling you, I have experienced every single one of these. So, common missteps among agents. They set goals without a clear roadmap. So I remember thinking, like, if I could just make if I could make $100,000, that would feel like a huge win, because I think my largest teaching salary was in California, maybe 70 something thousand dollars. And so I thought, if I could just break 100, even get to 100, that would be so awesome. Right. But I had no idea like how to get there. Like, there was no action, there was no steps, nothing. Establish annual goals without a way to measure the progress. Guilty. Busy, like very busy, but not making real progress. Narrowed focus on business only. Habits and standards don't quite align with goals, and their lack of self-belief to achieve the goal, like the goals and the dreams, right? So pretty much, I've fit into most of these categories before. And so I am excited to share with you some different things that helped to move the needle. What are you going to do to break this down? So all of those different things, the roadmap, the this, the that, like, what specific things? And for me, I like to get tactical of like, how do you do, like, okay, great, a roadmap, but like, what does that look like? Okay. So there are 2 different categories of goals that I'm putting this in. So the first one is time. And when we talk about time, there are like the 90-day goals. So for me, I like to do things in like 3-month intervals. So it's kind of that 12-week year. So when I look at my year, I look at it in 4 different sections. Okay. And if I'm able to get, achieve certain things in each of those 3 month, cycles, I'm like, oh, that's awesome. Oh, okay. And then kind of moving on. Right. So if you are able to look at your time in terms of 90 days, 1 year, 5 year, and your legacy goals, kind of, right? So I like to think of those goals. And then when I look at the categories of these goals that I'm looking at, I look at mind, like health and wellness. I look at body, physical health, and spirit in terms of like fulfillment. How happy am I? How much time am I able to spend with my family? And then overall business and financial success. So that's what I'm looking at, two different things with that, 2 different categories with that. So what you track, you improve. Honestly, I cannot stress this enough. If you are tracking things, you are going to become more accountable to yourself, and that accountability will lead you really, to some incredible things. So where are you in your current state right now today? I want you to ask yourself these questions. Where do you find yourself now? What's working? What's not working? Why am I doing what I'm doing? Or why am I not doing what I'm doing? Where am I wasting time? And how can I be more effective with those things? So for me personally, I remember when we moved here to Utah, and the traditional methods of building a business, I remember thinking like, well, okay, my kids at the time were 10, 8, and my twins were 5. And again, maybe this is limiting beliefs, but I'm like, I don't know anybody here in Utah. Like, I'm not going to cold call and door knock and like do some of these things. But I had watched my neighbor in San Diego. They had built this soap company, and they literally started it out of their garage. And year after year, kind of watched like them build and scale this business. And primarily it was done through the power of social media, through Instagram and Facebook. And I watched them do this, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is the coolest thing. Like, I didn't even, again, kind of living under a rock a little bit, but like I knew the power of social media. I just didn't know the extent of it. And so when we ended up moving here, I remember asking myself, okay, where am I? Okay, I'm in a new place. I don't know anyone. What's working? Well, nothing, because I haven't even like I have my license, and that's it. So nothing's working yet. Okay, so if it's not working, what do I need to do to launch that? And so there became, those ideas. And I always say the ideas that you get, however you feel like those ideas come to you, lean into that. And for me, a lot of times, and this sounds silly, but a lot of times my ideas come to me when I'm running on the treadmill, or I'm going for a run, or I'm doing some kind of exercise, or I have, those quiet moments. All of a sudden I'll get an idea of like, oh, why don't you try this? Why don't you try this? And so that was my, hey, maybe you should try Instagram here in Utah and just start this account, right? And so I started it. And when we talk about 90 days, when you start doing something over and over and over and over again, I remember the very first time I posted, I thought I was going to, have an anxiety attack. I remember being like, oh my gosh, this was so scary. I have 0 followers and zero, like nothing. And yet it still felt so nervous. But over time, do it for 90 days. And it doesn't feel like anything anymore, so you just consistently start doing it. And then what's going to end up happening is you're going to find what's working and what's not working. So start from where you are at today. How are you going to get to where you want to go? And the first thing that you really want to get crystal clear in your mind is, where do you want to go? Like, what do you want your business to look like? I remember one of the very first times I was, talking to my neighbor, and she was talking about like her business and how it was growing. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is incredible. And I'm like, well, where do you think this is going to end up going? Or how do you think this is going to end up leading? And all that. And she kind of gave me her roadmap, and I was like, wow, she seems really clear on that. And so kind of going back to, here are some examples when we talk about mind, body, spirit, and then your business. If you've got one that's running really, really well, but then the other ones are falling short, you're out of balance, right? And so if you're like 100% gung ho into your business and everything is going great, but then like the spirit, the body, the mind, all those things are not, not in line, then there's like this balance. And again, I always like to say, and I'm telling my husband Eric this all the time. I'm like, half of the time I feel like I'm spinning plates. And so like this plate is spinning. Tell me, like, raise your hand if that sounds familiar, where you're like, I am spinning this plate and this feels like this is going really well right now. And then this one drops. And then I'm like, oh no, I got to pick this one back up here. Oh, this one's kind of like dropping, it's kind of like the merry-go-round where everything's like up and down. Well, I feel like life is a lot like that sometimes. But if you're able to kind of implement different things for you that personally works for you and set those clear goals of what that looks like. So for an example, mind, embrace your self-discipline, whatever that might look like. Body, I remember several years before I had our oldest kid, I was like, Eric, I'm gonna run a marathon. And he looks at me, he's like, you've never run more than like 2 miles. And I'm like, I know, but it's on the list. Like, I'm going to do it. And he's like, well, how are you going to do it? I go, I have no idea yet. And so over the years, then like over time, then I was like, okay, I just made this commitment. Like, I'm going to run a marathon, but I don't even know what to do. Literally got online, training plan of how to run a marathon. And Hal Higdon's marathon training guide came up, and it was literally like, week 1, do this. On Monday, run this many miles. On Tuesday, run this, and did it like laid it out. And so here is your 16-week marathon training schedule. The same applies for your business of literally just breaking things down into little bites. So whatever that is, whatever those examples look like, if this year you want to sell 15 homes and you have not sold 1 home yet, okay, what is it going to take to get to those 15 homes? So this goes back into my teaching days of setting your SMART goals. So if you want to be able to sell 15 homes this year, maybe it's 20, maybe it's 30, maybe it's 5, maybe you want to sell 5 homes this year and you will be thrilled if you sell 5 homes. Whatever your specific goal is, you want to make it specific for you. So who, what is measurable? How are you going to be able to do this? Achievable? Is it reasonable? If I were to say like, hey, you know what? I know I just moved to Utah. I don't know anybody here, but I want to sell 100 homes. You know what? That could happen if I, decide to make some drastic changes. But for me, that didn't feel like reasonable, and it didn't feel like something I wanted to do. Relevant, expected results, and then time bound. When do you want to do this? So if you say, I want to be able to sell 15 homes by next year, November 7th, 2024, what is that going to look like? So this is exactly what I was just saying. So if I want to sell 15 homes next year, 12 months, you are going to write this down. You are going to write down, have it somewhere where you can see it, make it visible so that you are looking at that. You are visualizing what your goal is for that. So you've got your goal. Now, where do you start? Realtors only need to focus on 3 things. Yes, 3 things when it comes to your business. And I know getting into the business 17 years ago, I remember seeing like this shiny object and this thing and this thing and that, there are so many ways to build your business. But really, when you boil it down, it comes to 3 things: getting clients, serving clients, and nurturing the clients that you do have. And it ends up just continuing to go in this cycle. So getting clients, serving clients, and nurturing clients. So today, we're basically just going to talk about getting the clients, because that ends up being, for most agents, the hardest thing to do is to get the clients. Many of you are, phenomenal at serving them and nurturing them as you go throughout, but it's actually the getting the clients. So what are you doing on a daily basis to generate leads, to generate your own leads? And, the saying, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? So When I moved here to Utah, I, again, didn't have a single client, didn't know anybody. And this was literally 3 years ago. And I look at what's happened in 3 years, never paid for an ad, never sponsored a post, which you can do all of those things. And that is great. But from, just organic traffic, you can't, you can do it just by taking small daily actions every single day. So what do you need to do to get to that point? What do you need to do to get there? Okay, so this is one of the bonuses that you guys are going to get. And this is a guide, and it's 53 ways that you can take action in your business. Anything from showing up on a social media account to text messaging, to your sphere of influence, to creating a website. All of these different things, there are so many. And the reason I look at all these different things, pick one to start with. Honestly, pick something that you're like, I feel like I can show up on Instagram every single day, or I feel like I can shoot 2 YouTube videos a week and post those, or I feel like I can knock on 50 doors a week and that's going to work. Whatever it is that you feel like you can commit to, and do it for 90 days. Do it for 90 days. And what's going to happen is you're going to start, developing momentum in that, and whatever action that is. So for me, it was, I'm going to show up on Instagram every single day for 90 days, and let's just see what happens, right? So what ended up happening for me is I showed up on Instagram, and at that time, I guess it was, 3 years ago, I just said, you know what, every single day I'm going to post a post. I hadn't posted a story. I didn't know about Reels at the time. If I were to go back in time, I think I would just focus primarily on Reels and trending audio, and I'll do another training on that sometime. But honestly, just showing up, making that consistent action every single day. And then what's going to happen is in 90 days, you're going to look at whatever form it is that however you're taking action, and you're going to see what seems to be working, what's not working. If you did whatever that was, you committed to it for 90 days and nothing happened, it might be that the content isn't landing well with people. It might be there could be a lot of different things, but you can take a deep dive and kind of look at that. So the first thing is taking action on whatever it is that you decide that, whatever form is going to work for you. So the second thing, once you get to that point and you start taking action daily on that thing, you are going to dive into what I like to kind of say, the analytics. My husband's a tax accountant, and so he loves talking about numbers, and everything we practically do in our family has to do with a spreadsheet, where I'm like, Eric, can we just not have the Excel spreadsheet right now? I'm feeling like this is a good choice. And no, let's go. It's based on the numbers. So really, if you take a look at your KPIs, your key performance indicators, if you wanted to sell 15 homes by December 31st, 2024, and you have 0 clients today, this is what you would need to do. You would need to make about an appointment and a half a week with potential buyers or sellers. So that ends up equating to 6 per month. So if you were to have one appointment, and an appointment, honestly, I think sometimes real estate agents, totally guilty of this, think an appointment has to be sitting in somebody's house and having a formal conversation about this, right? It does not have to be like that. A lot of my appointments have been on the soccer field when I am sitting and I'm bundled up and it's cold and there's another parent sitting next to me, and we're talking about this and that, and then all of a sudden the parent looks at me and is like, hey, by the way, what's the market like? And I'm like, oh, well, that's a great question. Are you thinking about buying, selling, investing? What area are you most interested in? Well, I've got this investment property and I'm thinking it might be time to sell it. And I'm like, oh, yeah. Well, tell me a little bit more about that, and then they start to. So sometimes when we get thinking, this has happened to me, when we start thinking about, we need to have an appointment every single, one appointment every week. Those appointments can be, wherever you are in your in your life. It can be on the tennis court. It can be walking with a friend. It can be an event that you are holding for whatever it is. It can be a get together that you went to. It honestly, it can be formal, but it does not have to start as formal. Okay. Here's a perfect example. I started a YouTube channel a little over a year ago. And this YouTube channel, I am telling, like this week, I have two appointments, actually three. I met with one couple last night. I've got another appointment this upcoming week and another appointment next week, all from YouTube, of people reaching out and saying, hey, we're relocating here from, this place. I've got a 1031 exchange. I'm looking at buying this property here. We're thinking, like, I've been watching your videos. So when we're talking about these appointments too, a lot of them can be people who are relocating into your area as well. The same thing has happened on Instagram, the same thing, depending on where you're at in your business. But these appointments, long story short, is they don't have to be super formal. They can be, you can have a formal buyer's consultation and a formal seller's consultation and all that, but like it can happen at church, it can happen at, like, it literally can happen anywhere. So if you do that, you are likely to close 50% of those appointments per month. So if you have, let's say, in that 6 months, if you are able to have 50% of those, and then likely those 50% of the appointments ready to make a move about 1.5 a month. So if you even had 1.5 of those every single month, you would hit your goal. And it could be just as easy as that. If you want to sell less, then that goes down. If you want to sell more, then that goes up. So just depending on what you want to do in your business, can really, depend on that. So the lead generation plan, what type of lead sources will you focus on? Like I said, if again, focusing on one to start with is, I think, really helpful. If you're able to, eventually you can start putting on multiple hats, because what's going to happen is you've got that plate that we talked about that was spinning. And instead of having all these drop, get comfortable with the one thing in 90 days. If you get comfortable with that one thing in 90 days and you develop systems. So like for me, for Instagram, I don't even think about Instagram anymore because I've been doing it so long that I have a monthly plan that's already like written out for, I write out my posts. It takes me now probably 30 minutes to 45 minutes for the entire month worth of content. And so for me, like the system, it just works. And then now, I've implemented YouTube, and YouTube is one of those things where I'm like, oh, I post 2 videos a week, and that one's kind of on autopilot. So now then you can start taking on other things. So whatever those things are in your business, focus on, is it, holding client events? Is it, doing more things with your sphere? Is it Instagram, TikTok, whatever that is, focus on that. And the next question is, how will you contact these leads to generate appointments? So what will you be doing in order to continue that relationship with these people? Now, the 2 types of lead generation that we're going to look at, the one is proactive and the next one is reactive. So proactive are things that you are doing in your business daily, weekly, monthly, and so forth. So if you are doing proactive things like, I am going to hold 4 open houses a month. That is going to be something that's proactive. Or I'm going to make 25 phone calls a day, or I'm going to knock 25 doors a day. I am going to, paid ads, or I'm going to reach out to this many people within my sphere or events. For me, again, this was a new market. For me, I didn't know anyone. I had no sphere, and I had nobody to invite to my events because I didn't know anybody. So for me, leaning into social media, actually, as uncomfortable as it felt like kind of weirdly comfortable, because I didn't have to talk to anybody that I didn't know, because I didn't know anybody here. So there's that saying, get comfortable being uncomfortable. Tell me if you've heard that one before, right? And so much of this stuff is getting comfortable with the uncomfortable. And then the next one is reactive, and this is the organic traffic. So when I moved here, I wasn't I didn't do anything on the proactive, which, that if you're doing these things simultaneously, then really things can start to happen. But the reactive is the organic content that's coming in. This is the social media. This is Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, whatever that is. I'm telling you, it usually takes 6 months of consistently doing this, though. At least that's what I found in my business. So after 3 months, I looked at what was happening. And at least for me on Instagram, when I first started out, after 3 months, I, took a deep dive and I'm like, okay, my audience is consuming this content and my audience is, interacting with this. I'm going to start putting out more of that content. Then 90 days later, then I was like, okay, this seems to be working, but maybe this is not landing very well. So then the next 90 days is when I actually got my first listing here in Utah from somebody who reached out from Instagram. And they said, hey, I see that you sell homes here in Utah and in California. We've got a luxury property. It's on 15 acres. Can I tell you about the property? And I literally was like, wait, what? This happens? I called Eric, he was at work. I'm like, Eric, I just got this DM. It dropped in my DMs. And I don't know if it's, I don't know if it's real. I don't know. I don't know what I don't know, right? I screenshot it and I sent it to him. He's like, looks kind of like, it looks real. I'm like, I know. And, of course I'm like nervous and excited, but these are like the reactive of like, okay, now what do you do when that happens? Long story short, I ended up selling their home. I represented them. That was the first of, many listings to come, but it all came from showing up. Nothing happened for 90 days of consistently posting, but that next 90 days, something happened. So give yourself grace and give yourself the freedom to just do something consistently for a while and not see any results, honestly. So if you're going to reverse engineer your weekly schedule, this is what I like to do. So for me, I am a carpool driving mom of four. My kids have a half day. Half of my kids have a half day on Wednesday and half of them have a half day on Friday. So my window that I'm like, okay, let's go is fairly limited during the week. So I've got like Monday and Tuesday and Thursday that I can kind of go, all in my 6 hours that I have to work. Wednesday and Friday, those usually are going to be shorter. So I'm usually not going to do as much on those days. And so when you're looking at your schedule, plug in all of the things that are, non-negotiables in your schedule. So the non-negotiable in my schedule is I'm picking up the kids from carpool. That's just what I do. Those are non-negotiables. But everything else can really, there's flexibility in it. So like when I have clients that fly in from out of town, like last night, I had somebody fly in from the Bay Area and we went and did, a home inspection and all that. And I knew, oh, you know what? I've got a window of time from this time to this time. And, hey, would you be willing to meet at the house at this time? Yeah, that's great. So figuring out what your schedule looks like and reverse engineer it. So for me, I do, and I know like these hours are, you can make it work for however it is for you. But like for me, if I'm able to like prep content, edit content, record videos, or do whatever that is, if I give myself certain amount of time each day and then, allow for other things that come up during the day, you will be surprised how much you're going to actually be able to get done. And if you treat it like a real job, and oftentimes as real estate agents, I know we're like, oh, we've got this awesome flexibility. And I remember that was like my thought in the beginning too. I'm like, oh, look, I get to make my own schedule. This is so amazing. And no deals are coming in. And it's like, okay, so we need to change this. So deals are coming in. So if you are consistent on whatever it is for your calendar and your schedule, things will start to happen. If it's not in your calendar, it's not a priority. So for me, if it's not in my calendar, it's probably not going to happen just because everything is pretty scheduled out. So if you're going to reverse engineer your business, this gives you a little bit of an idea of some of the things that I do in my business. So I wake up at 5:18 every day and but I go to bed early. So I wake up early and I go to bed early. And for me, and again, not everybody has to be, Eric does not consider me a morning person. He's like, you're really not a morning person or an even like or a night person. I'm like, you know what? Yep, that's just the way I am. But honestly, if I get up early in the morning, I am able to get so many things done and accomplished. And when we're talking about like mind, body, and spirit, like my mind is clearer in the morning if I do my exercise, if I do my journaling, if I am doing my affirmations every morning, and I have my whole little morning routine. As soon as that's done, it's kid time. I am making pancakes. I'm helping kids get their, school uniforms and all of that stuff ready to go. And then I drive them to school. As soon as I get back from school, then it's kind of like, all right, game on. Like, let's see what I need to do for the day. But most of that day was actually planned the night before. So on my days, if I'm able to lay my clothes out the night before, like I have my exercise clothes all laid out, I've got my work clothes all laid out, like everything's already kind of ready to go. So 5:18 alarm goes off, whoop, quickly get dressed, exercise, do my morning routine. And then everything, like I don't have to be thinking about all the different things. Same thing with like lead follow up. Like today I already knew, hey, I've got to contact these couple of people and now we need to work out this. Whatever it is that you know for your day, plan it the day before. There's always going to be things that come up, but then just kind of plug in, reverse engineer whatever it is, however you're going to be building your business. If it's like we said, Instagram, TikTok, Sphere, open house, cold call, whatever that is, plug those in to these areas right here. And we know that in our business, there are always so many like daily tasks and daily routines that we need to do, CMAs and content recreation and educate, all of these different things can take up a lot of time. So plugging in things during your day at least has been super helpful for me. If I know, hey, I've got a closing on Friday, then I'm probably not going to be shooting videos for whatever, right? If I know that I've got a home inspection on this day, then I'm probably going to do some of these other things, at other times during the day. So, like we said, after 90 days, ask yourself these questions. Take a little review of the things that are working in your business and that may not. So, if you were to go back, so your 90-day goals, maybe your goals were, I am going to, I'm going to shoot 2 YouTube videos every single week for the next 90 days, or I'm going to post on Instagram 4 days a week and I'm going to respond to all the comments. Whatever the goal is that you're going to set, take a look. Did it work? Did it not? Why did it work? Why did it not work? What are your biggest challenges for that? What are your successes? And this is the thing, I think, especially as agents and women in business, we're hard on ourselves. We are hard on ourselves. And this message is for you is honestly, give yourself some grace. You are doing so much, like you do so much every day that, and at least for me, when I was looking at like goal planning, like, oh, this feels like so much. Take it in tiny little bites, because all the different things that you are doing different, during the day, a lot of times some of those things aren't measured. When my daughter last night was like, Mom, can you just sit here and hold me for a minute? I'm thinking like, oh yeah, I would love to. And it's like, let me just sit and just take those moments. And there's so many things. And again, that kind of goes back to spirit, like, oh, that feels so good, right? I'm going to sit and I'm going to hold you and I love you and you love me. And this just feels good, right? And so take those moments. And when I go to me, that's success. And so the more that I'm able to focus on that success during the day, that's not measured by, monetary, or it's not measured by all those different things. But to me, like at the end of the day, and I've been trying to do this for, I don't know, the last couple of years, before I go to bed at night, I just kind of reflect on the day. And like you and I know, every single day has challenges, and every single day, some days feel a lot harder than others, and other days sometimes feel easier. But before you go to bed, at least for me, I honestly just take a minute to just think of what were the five best things that happened? What were the five successes that I felt in my business, right? Or not even my business, just my life. Last night as I laid down, I'm like, oh, it was so, that sweet hug with Ruby was so awesome. And then even I got to, I drove carpool out to Salt Lake. And so it was 35 minutes there and 35 minutes back. But I had these three sweet girls in my car and listening to them laughing and singing the Kids Bop. And, as I'm driving the minivan, I'm like, oh my gosh, I love my life. Like, this is so fun, right? And then I'm thinking about the inspection that I had with these clients that are moving in. And I'm thinking that it went really well. Like, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I think just celebrating those successes and celebrating those tender little moments that you have during the day will honestly like fill your cup so much more. And by doing that, it spills over into your business. Honestly, it spills over. And so I just think, and then really taking a look at what you learned over those 90 days. And my mom and dad were both elementary teachers and for 30 plus years. And my mom is like the most positive person you've ever met in your life. And, something crazy will happen during the day. And I'm like, oh my gosh, mom, you're never going to believe what just happened. And she's like, oh, okay. And of course she listens and is super sympathetic. And then she'll say, well, did you learn anything from that? Or was there an opportunity to learn or grow? And sometimes I'm like, no, there was no growth, no learning, no anything that I wanted that time. But honestly, I'm telling you, like, if you're able to take these moments of, the trials as, hey, you know what, that didn't work this time, or this went south, or this went sideways, or this, whatever, those are moments that you can reflect and go, okay, you know what could I do differently? So how are you going to get your next client? Most agents, and this is where I like to look at the high and the low in my business. So if I am like, if I feel like, hey, we are like crushing it, this would be my 110%. And this would be like maybe my 20%, right? Or maybe 50, let's do 50. So like 110% to 50%. Prospecting. If I am able to shoot and like upload 3 videos a week, I'm feeling like, whoa, I did 110% this week. That was awesome. If I'm able to, it was a hard week. Kids were sick. Husband was out of town for work. I'm like just happy to like be alive. Maybe my low is, 1 video for that week. So when you're evaluating your business, and the same thing goes for fitness, like if I am crushing it, if I get my hour of fitness in, whatever that looks like, hey, you know what? Wasn't feeling up for it. Still battling a cold, still whatever. It was a 15-minute walk, and that still feels like a win because I did something. So the same thing applies to your business. Take a look at what your optimum would be. Like if you felt like, hey, I crushed it this week by doing XYZ, this would be like my plateau. Like this is the peak. And then, wasn't feeling it, but I still showed up and I still did something, right? So hopefully that kind of gives you like a little bit of a gauge in those different things. And I always say you only fail if you don't try. Honestly, there are so many things I remember for years and years and years that held me back, that I thought, oh, I don't want to do this because what if I fail? What if it doesn't work? What if so-and-so sees me doing this? And I used to say, what's the worst that could happen? But I don't use that anymore. I think to myself and I ask myself, what is the best that could happen? Honestly, like what is the best that can happen is, if you start showing up on social media every day, if you start, doing these different things, what's the best that can happen in your business? And there's always going to be, like I said, there's always going to be things that come up. There's always going to be excuses. There's always going to be the things. But if you are able to leverage what I call like a key list or like a power list of what income producing activities are you doing in your business every single day to move the needle. It can be something so like it can be small. It can be, hey, you know what? I posted, whatever it is, I posted a post, or I put a blog post out there, I posted Instagram, I reached out to 5 friends, whatever it was, what are those things that are going to move the needle in your business? And write this out and put it on your calendar. So if you are like, you know what, this month, this week, these 90 days, I am going to commit to whatever that is. Okay. For me, so Eric gets home from work yesterday and I'm like, so I did a thing. And he's like, oh no, what happened? Because half of the time he's just like, Mariah, you just have a lot of energy. And I do have a lot of energy, but I also am like, I get tired. And so he goes, let me guess, and then he starts guessing different things. I'm like, no, I started a podcast. And he's like, oh, that's awesome. Congratulations. He goes, I thought you were going to do that in January. I'm like, I know, I just got too excited and I said, this is the thing. Honestly, this has been something that I love doing, and you might try doing this in your business too. I set a timer. And so in my business, oftentimes I will set a timer and I'm like, I am giving myself 1 hour to do this task. As soon as that timer goes off, I need to take a hard stop and then move on to something else. Or if I'm like, oh gosh, the momentum's going, I'm going to just keep going, or I'll set a timer for 30 minutes. So literally, I've been thinking about a podcast for 8, 9, 10 months, so long. And I've just been thinking, well, I don't know how to start it. And I don't know how. So I literally yesterday set a timer for an hour. And I went on Spotify and I started looking and I'm like, oh, this is it. Oh, I can use my phone. And I literally just took the phone and I took my microphone. I literally took my phone and my microphone and it was just like, okay, I'm recording an episode here. Here we go. Episode 1, let's go. And so honestly, I think sometimes these fears and these things that push us, hold us back in our business, take action on it. Give yourself a window of time to take action and then just go for it. And for me, it was like, oh, what's the worst that can happen? I'm going to devote myself, I'm going to give myself an hour of time. The kids are already at school and whatever happens, happens. I didn't think I thought I was going to be working on stuff so that in January I can launch this. Well, it just happened, So I think the same thing will happen for you in your business. Example of items on your key list. If you are devoting, 3 hours to prospecting, 1 hour to lead, follow up, an hour of nurturing, whatever, these numbers can look different for you depending on how many hours a week you want to work. I'm a full-time agent, but honestly, I work probably about 25 hours a week, which for me feels like it's a good, for me, I actually don't want to work 40 hours a week because I want to be there to do all the stuff with my kids. So for me, I'm like, it feels like a good balance, but again, you're going to want to pick what works for you. And for these two examples that are not found in our power list, usually carpooling, cooking, exercising, cleaning, grocery shopping, those are all the things that keep us busy, but those are usually not going to be the things that move the needle in your business. So just be aware of the different tasks. And for, some of those tasks, maybe you can delegate that out for somebody or something, right? Where figure out the things that are going to move the needle and then double down on those things more. So ask yourself the question, is this getting you closer to your goals? And if it is, continue doing more of it. If it's not, then start to redirect what you are doing. So last but not least, how can you guarantee you win? Ask yourself this question. What are you doing to move the needle in your business? 1, make the decision. 2, consistently show up. And I was talking to a friend the other day and they're like, Mariah, I just looked at this account, or I looked at this thing on yours. How in the world did you get to the last time I checked your account, you were, at this many followers or this, whatever. How do you have this many videos now? I'm literally it's just posting one thing a day. It's just doing the one thing every single day. And if you do that consistently, it's the same thing with your bank account. If you put away, a couple dollars every single day for savings, your savings account is going to grow. If you, put in, going back to my, marathon running, I didn't know how to run a marathon, but I made the decision. And then I consistently was like, okay, well, I'll run this many miles. It shows me to run, 1 mile here and then 3 miles here. And then my long run is going to be 4 miles on this week 1. And then the next week it said do that. So it was literally like, make the decision and then just do it. Like, do it. And there are, like we talked about, the highs and the lows. There are going to be days where you're like, I cannot show up for whatever reason. It's okay. It's okay. Tomorrow, try to do it. And if you go through a little spell where you're kind of like, okay, this week is just shot, that's okay too. Give yourself some grace and then pick up from where you left off. And I just think by being kind to yourself, giving yourself the grace and knowing that, again, you've got these different plates that are moving and all of that, focus on the one thing. Focus on the one thing, whatever that is that you decide that you're going to do in your business, and then trust in the process. If you trust in the process, you give yourself those 90 days, analyze kind of what's happening, taking care of yourself, because if you don't take care of yourself, you're not going to be able to take care of your clients. You're not going to be able to take care of all of that. So mind, body, and spirit, trusting in that process. And honestly, what you do today, like I get goosebumps thinking about this, but honestly, like what you do today, a year from now, like if you would have told me a year from now that I would have had 100 people reaching out to me from my YouTube videos, I would have laughed. Like I honestly would have just been like, wait, what? No, that's crazy. And honestly, there are going to be people in your life that'll look at you and be like, nah, like you're not one of that. You don't do that. Oh my gosh, I can't believe you're doing that. Like get rid of the distractions, get rid of the noise, and whatever it is, trust yourself. You get these thoughts, you get these feelings, trust them and lean into it. So that is basically what I've got. You can scan this QR code. I also have on my stand store this exact thing along with a 90-day business plan. So these 53 lead source, like this is an idea of like, pick something on there. And you know what? Maybe you are already doing it, but maybe you want to double down. Maybe you're like, you know what? I'm on Instagram, but I post twice a week or once a month, or I'm not as consistent as I would like to be. Figure out what it is and then double down. If it's, I want to hold more open houses, start reaching out to agents in your area. Hey, I'm so-and-so, I'm, Mariah, I'm, an agent with this. Please, I would love to hold an open house if you have anything that's coming up of, places that you want to be in your area neighborhood. So hopefully this gives you a little bit of motivation and a little bit of an idea of a roadmap. Again, this is just a sample. The national organization that I am part of, we do weekly meetings like this every single week that people are talking about how to build Instagram, how to build this, how to do this, how to do this. If you want to find out more, feel free to reach out to me. And then, well, I am so glad you are here. We will do this again. And again, if you are interested in learning more about our group, reach out to me and we would love to chat with you. And then pick up those freebies. They're on my stand store too. And then with that QR code as well. And if you didn't get it, let me know and I'll figure out a way to get those to you. And if I can, we'll, send this recording as well. Okay. Awesome. Wishing you a wonderful day and we'll be checking in later. Take care. Bye.